Hello, welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Brian Liddy, and tonight we have Chris McCusker with us as our guest. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
Evening, Brian. Yeah, I'm grand.
Good. So, as usual, we'll start with today's coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 3,011,668 people died in Scotland, have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. I might even start again. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 3,011,668 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 2,494,452 people have been confirmed negative. 517,216 have tested positive. There are 4,917 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. Due to IT issues, the figures reported today are likely to be an underestimate of the total tests and cases. There are, apologies, that was yesterday where there was an IT issue. But as of today, there are 13 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 8,293. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 1,079 were in hospital last night, 91 of whom of those were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,146,847 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 3,791,597 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 134,647 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness. That's an increase of 201 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just hospitals. As of the 12th of September, 10,688 deaths have been registered in Scotland where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published today by the National Records of Scotland. In the week from the 6th to the 12th of September, 76 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate. That's an increase of 18 deaths from the previous week. So apologies for the mix-up right at the start of the show there. So our first story is to do with today's reshuffle in London. Liz Truss is the new Foreign Secretary, the first woman to hold the post in more than a decade, after Boris Johnson demoted Dominic Raab to Justice Secretary in the wake of the Afghan crisis. Truss, a free marketeer, beloved of Conservative members, had been International Trade Secretary since 2019. Raab has been given the Justice portfolio, but was handed the title of Deputy Prime Minister as a sweetener, as Johnson carried out a wide-ranging reshuffle of his top team. The Prime Minister kicked off the shake-up by sacking 3 cabinet ministers. That was the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, the Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, and Housing Secretary and Community Secretary, Robert Jenrick. Raab had been widely tipped for a demotion after the debacle of the Kabul airlift. Nadine Dorries has been appointed to the Cabinet as Culture Secretary, while Nadeem Zahawi moves from Minister for COVID-19 Vaccine Deployment to Education Secretary. Commenting, SNP Deputy Leader Kirsten Oswald MP said, "Boris Johnson's botched reshuffle shows this is a tired Tory government that is out of talent and out of touch. The Prime Minister is rewarding failure by clinging on to Dominic Raab, Priti Patel, Michael Gove and a string of failed Tory ministers who wouldn't pass their probation in a normal workplace." It beggars belief that the UK ministers can break the ministerial code, act unlawfully, jet off on a holiday during a crisis, and fail to fulfil their basic duties, yet keep their place in the Tory cabinet at the taxpayers' expense. Chris, I didn't mention there because it came in while we were preparing for tonight's show, but Alistair Jack remains as the Secretary of State for Scotland, which is probably not a surprise. And the SNP minister was quoted as saying that Johnson, in this reshuffle, has... Sorry? Sure. So, Alistair Jack is still in post, and our SNP representative has said that in this reshuffle, Johnson is reform is rewarding failure, or would you say that it's maybe more accurate to say that he's actually rewarding loyalty? And if that is the case, then why aren't any of his other very loyal Tory MPs from Scotland? Why haven't they been given any promotion?
They won't get any promotion whatsoever, and it's a faux pas on their part to think that they would ever get rewarded with a UK ministerial post. Quite clearly, Boris Johnson doesn't rate Tories, so it's probably a bit of both, as you say, Brian, and also as what Kirsten is alluding to. But I think it's more to do with the fact that he hasn't sort of like ring-fenced the fox looking after the chickens. It's more like the fact that he's put them all on sentry posts right around by keeping Priti Patel, Liz Truss, all in the cabinet post. Admittedly, Dominic Raab has got a demotion, but is put in charge of justice when it's been on record the fact that he doesn't believe in the Human Rights Act. So I mean, again, it's just that these are tired, ultra ambitious, underperforming MPs that have been rewarded, yes, quite rightly, for being loyal to Boris Johnson, but also, towing the party line and basically just being his whipping boys and women.
Yes. So thank you for that. So we'll move on to the next story. The SNP has called on Boris Johnson to U-turn on the UK government's universal credit cuts that will leave millions of families £1,040 a year worse off after MPs voted against the move. David Linden MP said Douglas Ross and his 5 spineless Scottish Tory MPs had abandoned people in Scotland by abstaining on the cuts. Forgive me, but by abstaining on the cuts, which will make 400,000 Scottish families poorer, including 3,150 families with children in the Scottish Tory leader's marginal Moray constituency. The SNP Working Pensions spokesperson said it was now beyond all doubt that people in Scotland are financially worse off under the Tories, and the only way to keep Scotland safe from more Tory cuts is to become an independent country. Commenting, SNP Working Pensions spokesperson David Linden said Boris Johnson's damaging plan to slash the incomes of 6 million people by £1,040 a year will push even more families into poverty and crisis. Low and middle income workers are being hammered by this Tory government. There must be a U-turn. Chris, I wonder, this inflation rise that we're still doing universal credit cuts, yes. Can I just ask have you any thoughts on that?
On the inflation rise or the universal credit cut?
On the universal credit cut, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, with the today's opposition was an opposition day motion debate. So, in effect, it was really quite meaningless, the actual vote. However, it's worth to highlight the fact that the 6 Scottish Tories abstained on the vote to try and sort of like save face. But I mean, Scotland can see right through that, and the
I'm
actual
told.
part of the going back to what I originally said, is the fact that it's just all the Tories, all the Tory MPs, be them Welsh, English, or Scottish, as the fact that they, just towing the party line, not bucking the system. No doubt they were all whipped and stuff like that. So as not to, make any headlines. It's been well documented the fact that there are rebel Tory MPs that are not happy about the universal credit cuts. But at the end of the day, it still won't cause them to rebel against Boris Johnson. So I mean, it's also worth mentioning the fact an awful lot of people talk about the cabinet cabal that Boris Johnson has amassed. But the actual cabal is in the actual, government benches, because they blindly follow suit in order to, toe the party line.
Yeah, I think it was telling that today there was only one Scottish Tory MP that stood to contribute to the debate, whereas there were several SNP MPs who contributed a lot to the debate. But moving on to the next story. Okay. But the next story is the UK inflation made its biggest jump on record in August amid a rise in food and drink prices, reversing a sharp decline a year earlier during the government's Eat Out to Help Out restaurant discount scheme. The Office for National Statistics said that the Consumer Prices Index measure of annual inflation rose to 3.2% in August, up from 2% in July, and the highest rate since March 2012, as the cost of a meal snapped back from a period of steep discounting a year ago. The increase in prices surpassed City economists' forecasts for a rate of 2.9%, and the 1.2 percentage point increase between July and August figure was the largest since records began in January 1997. It comes as shortages of workers and supplies caused by Brexit put pressure on the UK's economic recovery from lockdown and risks pushing up the cost of living for consumers as businesses struggle to digest higher costs. Reflecting the challenge for firms, manufacturers' input price inflation rose from 10.4% in July to 11% in August. That's the highest level since 2011, with soaring demand and supply disrupting worldwide, pushing up the cost of wood and steel. Factory gate prices rose from 5.1% to 5.9%, also the highest in a decade. Analysts said mounting production costs would take time to hit consumers and would depend on whether firms pass on higher prices or choose to sacrifice profit margins to maintain sales volumes. So, Chris, with my understanding is that with this new rise in inflation, it's past a threshold whereby the Governor of the Bank of England now has to write to Rishi Sunak in the Treasury to explain the rise in inflation. Do you think the Governor of the Bank of England will tell the truth to Rishi Sunak for the rise, and if not, why not?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if he'll tell the truth. Because at the end of the day, the Governor of the Bank of England, the Tories, all the rest of it, they are all steeped, within the Westminster establishment, if you like. But look, trade unions, right, the length and breadth of the country, have been warning households that it would, they need to wake up and expect a double whammy at Christmas. because of the rising food prices due to the fact that we've got a pandemic of a shortage of HGV drivers, which is going to ramp up food prices. We've already seen it in the food and drink sector. But I mean, on normal day-to-day household goods, it is just going to start soaring. I hate to be the doom-monger of gloom, but I'm not looking forward to Christmas whatsoever. But add that to the rising household bills as well. When we see a rise in energy prices and stuff like that that's coming into effect. We also see a rise. I don't know about you, but I mean I've had about 8 or 10 messages regarding offering me the latest mobile phone deals because that's usually a sign where they're going to start ramping up the prices as well. And it's going to come to a head, whether or not it begins with a perfect storm at Christmas. But I think the perfect storm would probably start the likes of in January when people are starting to tighten their belts after the festive period, if they can, if they can actually start to enjoy the festive period, because we've got the ending of the furlough coming. We've got the £20 cut in universal credit that we've already discussed. You add that all together, throw that into the mix, and it's not looking, the best of starts into 2022.
Yeah, and Chris, it was hinted at in the report that we just read out there that one of the reasons they think this inflation rises was Rishi Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out scheme. They say that simply because that made everything a lot cheaper, that's gone now, so prices have gone back up and it's not to worry about. Is that true, do you think, or has it maybe got something to do with, if you're a Scrabble player, a 6-letter word beginning with B that contains the word X, and if you line it up on a triple score box, and you'll end up with a really high score?
Aye. Thank the Lord that you actually put in the word the letter X in there, because something starting with a B could certainly describe this Tory cabal that are currently running the country.
Yeah, we haven't passed the watershed yet. So.
Yeah, no, I mean you're absolutely correct. Again, I said it last week to Andrew, as the fact that Brexit was only ever a pursuit of money by the Tory cabal. It wasn't anything to do with taking back control or regaining the sovereign status of a once great empire, and all that mince. It was just about making money for their pals and obviously for themselves, as we've seen through the dodgy PPE deals and stuff like that the Tories have managed to ingratiate themselves to. This will go on as long as Labour in the UK stand completely toothless towards the Tories day in day out in Westminster. It beggars belief to the fact that Keir Starmer has never even thought about raising a motion of no confidence in the government whatsoever. It's quite clear that it is a calamity express train that is running out of control with nobody at the driving wheel whatsoever. And again, as long as this continues, Scotland and Wales, and we have to forget, or sorry, we often forget the fact that Wales are, in being subjected to the same amount of austerity cuts that Scotland is going through, and they're having a tough time with it. We see now the fact that Welsh Labour are talking about a possible coalition agreement similar to what Scotland has with the SNP have with the Greens. Welsh Labour are talking about a similar situation along with Plaid Cymru. The total rejection of everything that Boris Johnson is trying to do with his unionist agenda of levelling up is really, really not working for the devolved competencies.
There's a story coming up, Chris, where we might be able to elaborate on that and maybe delve into that a wee bit more. So is it okay if I move on to the next question and the next topic? The chief statistician has released statistics showing that the Scottish economy grew by 4.7% during April to June 2021. Change in gross domestic product is the main, or the GDP, is the main indicator of economic growth. Over the year, compared to the second quarter of 2020, the economy in Scotland has grown by 21.7%. Responding to the publication of the GDP statistics, Economy Secretary Kate Forbes said that today's first estimate of a 4.7% increase in GDP for the first quarter of 2021 is a tribute to the adaptability and resilience shown by so many businesses during the pandemic. And she observed that the growth in the second quarter reflects the removal of lockdown restrictions, increased mobility, and the acceleration of the vaccination programme. Ms Forbes said, increasing economic prosperity is a key objective of this government because it is the means by which we invest in infrastructure, deliver public services and support our citizens. Fair and sustained economic growth is essential, and the 10-year National Strategy for Economic Transformation, to be published this autumn, will build on our green economic recovery, prioritise investment in the industries of the future and deliver new, good and green jobs. She added that the pandemic is not over and challenges remain, pointing out that some sectors such as retail, tourism and hospitality still face obstacles on the road to recovery. However, she was emphatic that this GDP estimate clearly shows that Scotland's economy is continuing its recovery from the global pandemic, and that working with business and trades unions, the Scottish Government will build a greener, fairer and more prosperous economy with well-being at its core. So, Chris, the Scottish economy is growing. It's good news, but is it surprising, especially after what we've been talking about in terms of Brexit and the combination of the COVID pandemic? Is this proof that Scotland really is better off in the Union? And if so, should Scots stop voting SNP?
Right, I really don't know where you're going with this line of questioning, Brian. Listen, Scotland could be on its knees economically, physically, and we would still be far better without the Union. The Union is dragging Scotland down. You only have to look at the latest export figures and understand why I'm saying that. Is that the fishing community were shafted, if you don't mind me saying, by the whole Brexit debacle. The farming sector has been shafted, and as by some quirk of fate, that the retail sector, the tourist industry as well, the hospitality sector, have all managed to redouble their efforts in order to reopen. And the majority of tourists that have come up through England, are quite happy, to pay the prices that are, that have been set out. So, I mean, I wouldn't exactly sort of like say that this is the time to, get back, under the enclaves of the Union.
My line of questioning, Chris, was I was really just thinking what those people who are pro-union might say after hearing these figures saying that Scotland's doing well.
Listen, the tired old arguments of the benefits of the Union. They always say that kind of statement oh, there's always a benefit, sharing everything within the union. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it's complete and utter mince. There has been no benefit to Scotland in 300 years of being, in this union. Quite clearly, you only have to look. If you look back at the deprivation of the 1960s and the 70s, where there were Waynes having to sleep in the top drawers of dressing tables and stuff like that because there were 5 people living in a single end, and they still had an outside clergy. Whilst the people in the southeast and all the rest of it have had all the infrastructure, they've had all the relevant house building. You look at places like Weston-super-Mare and all the rest of it that have just grown and grown exponentially. Between the 60s and the 70s, and Scotland was left behind. Large parts of the north of England were left behind as well. It's no wonder the fact that Coronation Street continued to keep on having that opening scene with the cobbled streets and the old houses and stuff like that, because that's pretty much the south of England's idea of the fact that it's grim up north, so you might as well stay with that. At the end of the day, Scotland can do it a lot better than what it is currently doing in this union. But the Westminster government are not willing to invest in the renewable sector, which will greatly benefit Scotland. Which obviously, again, we're going to have to, have that just transition from what the Westminster government heavily relied on, which is the fossil fuel industry, and they're unwilling to change over to the new renewable green energy because it is not that profitable for them. That is the be-all and end-all of it, mate.
That brings us neatly on to the next question, Chris, but I think before we do leave that, I think it's safe to say that you would say that these figures are despite being in the union rather than because of it. But moving on to the next story. An SNP MP has called on the UK government to work with the party to deliver a clear roadmap to capitalise on the immense potential of geothermal energy in Scotland. Owen Thompson, MP, today urged the UK government to offer clear financial incentives to help develop geothermal energy, which has the ability to meet Scotland's local and national heat needs and help achieve its ambitious emission reduction targets. The SNP has led the campaign at Westminster to invest heavily in renewable technologies such as offshore wind farms and geothermal resources, rather than the current outdated nuclear technology. A study conducted by SAGE in 2018 estimated that the quantity of heat available from deep geothermal resources and flooded mines was approximately 100 years' worth of heat supply for the entire UK. Owen Thompson said, "The SNP has led the way in campaigning for new, progressive ways of generating energy. While the Scottish SNP government commits to offshore wind farms, the UK government remains committed to outdated nuclear systems." So, Chris, with the upcoming COP26 in mind, this is just it's another renewable energy that Scotland seems to be rich in, and it ties in with maybe what you were saying towards the end of the last question. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and again, as long as we're in this union, the level of engagement from the British government will be testament to what I was saying earlier on. If the UK government are not willing to invest heavily in the renewable sector, then you can only deduce from that as the fact that the reason that they won't invest in it is because they don't see any high profit in it. Now, the main reason that the UK government pillaged and plundered the oil fields off of the north coast of Scotland is because of the amount of money that they could make out of that. remember it was back in, I think it was, now who was it now? I think it was under David Cameron's tenure that they redrew the actual British area of the actual oil fields. I was under Tony Blair just to get that completely right. But again, that was them reclaiming or actually thieving, more to the point, as Scotland's oil deposits. So that once the Scotland actually develops and actually shows reproducible results in the renewable sector, the British government won't take any interest in it until they can actually see that there is, potential profit to come from it. The other side of the coin as well is the fact that the gas companies and the electricity companies as well, they are standing to lose an awful lot of money because of the benefits of renewable, which is a natural resource. You cannot charge for a natural resource. Well, you possibly can, because there have been capitalist companies for years that have been bottling water and selling it to Scottish people, unwittingly Scottish people who think that bottled water is better than what comes out of the tap. Everybody knows that Scottish tap water is, the cleanest in the world, and yet people buy bottled water. It's money for old rope, as far as I'm concerned.
You can top up your water bottle in the street nowadays here in Scotland, as you say, because the tap water there's nothing wrong with it. So absolutely right.
No, I mean,
the next story is the one that I was suggesting earlier on, Chris, that might tie into something that you were talking about earlier about the devolved governments working together. So the governments of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are calling on the UK government to offer EU citizens physical proof of their settled or pre-settled status. Currently, EU citizens who have secured settled or pre-settled status have no way of proving with physical documentation that they have the right to reside in the UK, potentially causing problems for their employment and access to services. Today, a joint letter from Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland ministers have been issued to the UK government, which voices their collective concern over the offer of a digital-only platform for proof. This letter to Kevin Foster, UK Minister for Future Borders and Immigration, has been signed by Minister for Europe Jenny Gilruth, Wales Minister for Social Justice Jane Hutt, and Northern Ireland's First Minister Paul Givan and the Deputy First Minister Michelle O'Neill. It states that a physical document to be offered in addition to existing digital proof would be an additional safeguard to provide reassurance, help prevent discrimination, and assist employers and other service providers. The letter states, "We all have an obligation under the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020 to ensure that EU citizens are treated fairly." So, Chris, as you were saying earlier, is this, I mean, for me, it's like the very fact that there's a UK minister who's there for future borders sounds incredibly bizarre. But once again, the devolved administrations have united to ask for the same thing, to protect the rights of EU citizens post-Brexit. Have you anything more to say, considering what we touched on that earlier on?
Well, yeah, and this is something again that's been done in conjunction with the Welsh government and also the Northern Ireland Assembly, and again it's something that was highlighted in the Brexit agreement that the Tories have yet to address. Funnily enough, actually, I was having a chat with one of my friends who lives in Lanzarote. And he was telling me that there's still the Spanish government are actually still actively evicting people who didn't fill out their what's known in the Canaries as your residencia. An awful lot of these people are actually finding that it was false folly to actually put their faith in the Tory government to think that everything would be as seamlessly smooth as what they were suggesting. So coming back to the UK shores, because there is a hard border in Northern Ireland, nobody can doubt that now. It is right and proper with the amount of EU nationals that we still have within the British Isles that have got a European right of freedom of movement to move from the likes of Scotland and Wales. If you're travelling from, Cairnryan over to, across the ferry over to Belfast. If you're going from Holyhead over to Larne.
But Chris,
Uh,
isn't it more than that? I mean, you're absolutely right, but it seems like such a simple thing to have some kind of ID to show what your status is. But if you can't prove that you're supposed to be here, then it puts things like your job at risk, your house at risk, any benefits at risk. It's potentially the sort of thing that could ruin someone's life, and yet, is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
yeah,
Yeah.
no. I mean, you're absolutely 100% correct there, Brian. I mean, I'm just pointing out the fact that European citizens that are in Britain just now, they have got a right to move regardless. They should be, completely unchallenged, whether it's through the Northern Ireland border going into Europe, or actually moving from the English border, at Dover, and moving into France. But while the EU citizens are in Britain at this moment in time, they have to have, some sort of substantial paperwork, be that whether it's digital or hard copy, to say that they have a legal right to remain. They've also that would then, if they fall into hard times, obviously that would allow them to have a legal right to the recourse of public money, such as benefits and all the rest of it. It's, again, as I was saying, it's something that wasn't exactly discussed when the whole Brexit debacle was going on. It was, a case of the people who brokered the deal just said, we'll read the small print later. Thanks very much. And this is very much similar to, the sausage gate thing that we seen, about a month ago, where all of a sudden the most tiniest, minuscule of sort of issues, where everybody thought it would just be a seamless transition, has now blown up in their face. And it is right that the devolved competencies are telling the UK government that they need to get this fixed, and they need to get it fixed quick.
That's another case in point, isn't it, Chris? Because the use of the word sausage gate makes it sound like something that's just to do with sausages, and what's that got in the scheme of things? But that's about food standards, isn't it?
Yep.
And what we're going to be putting in our bodies and our bellies. But moving on to another story which has a similar vein to the previous one, the Social Security Minister in Holyrood, Ben McPherson, has commented on legislation approved in Parliament to support people coming to Scotland as part of the Afghan resettlement scheme. Mr McPherson said, the Scottish Government is supporting the UK Government scheme to relocate and resettle people evacuated from Afghanistan. We want to welcome and support people who are settling in Scotland and provide assistance and services they will need from the day they arrive. We have changed legislation to ensure people have immediate entitlement to Scottish social security benefits and to make sure they are eligible as they look to rebuild their lives in our communities. Chris, again, it's almost the opposite to what we're talking about previously. This is the Scottish Government working in tandem, or saying that they agree with Westminster. Do you think that this is the right thing to do. I suppose I'm thinking, when does Holyrood decide to agree and work with Holyrood, and when maybe do they decide to try and do something different with the other devolved parliaments?
Well, we first have to remember the fact that Scotland only has 15% control over benefits, throughout the whole of Scotland. So the majority of the benefit system still reside in Westminster. Whilst it's as a transition of various benefits coming online in 2023, 24 and 25, within Scotland, this actually ensures the fact that what I was saying earlier, with regards to EU citizens, but also this pertains to refugees coming to this country, that they will have the right to the recourse of public funds. Now, the likes of disability living allowance, personal independence payment, the attendance allowance, and the carers allowance, should all be enshrined. That should be available. Under the current system as it is at this moment in time. Now, again, obviously, we've got a Westminster government who, are no friends of the Social Security. We all know that. These benefits are going to be vital if the Afghan refugees who relocate to Scotland or England or Wales, it's going to be vital for them to be able to integrate into society. Because when you limit someone to £5 a day, it is hard for them to actually, become upstanding members of the community and stuff like that. When they've got absolutely no money whatsoever. So again, this is Scotland being on the front foot.
Is this the Scottish government urging Westminster to do the right thing? Do you think?
Correct. Of course it is. It's the Scottish government being on the front foot. It's the Scottish government telling the Westminster government that Scotland believes in fairness and equality, and also dignity and respect for human life, these refugees that are coming to Scotland, they have to be treated with the parity of esteem of every other human being in these islands, and it is a simple request, forcibly made by Ben McPherson. Ben is an absolute stalwart and champion the rights of refugees and migrants, this is Scotland actually telling Westminster to do the right thing, not requesting it, telling it.
Okay, well, we hope it has a positive outcome. Moving on to the other side of the Atlantic, California Governor Gavin Newsom has beaten back a Republican campaign to oust him from office, sending a decisive message that voters in the deeply democratic state supported his policies for tackling COVID-19, immigration and crime. Newsom, who won his first term in 2018 by a landslide, again claimed a resounding victory in the special recall election. That means he will remain in office through his term ending in January 2023 and see his chances significantly bolstered in next year's regularly scheduled election. With 58% of precincts reporting late last night, Newsom was ahead by 32 percentage points, with 66% of voters saying he should stay in office and 34% saying he should be removed. His win and the high turnout in Tuesday's election came as a relief to Democrats who already were bracing for a tough fight in the 2022 elections that will decide control of Congress. A loss in one of the party's stronghold states would have set off alarms across the country, particularly given the leading Republican challenger was a supporter of former President Donald Trump, with a track record of controversial statements about women and minorities. Newsom and Democratic leaders, including President Joe Biden, characterised the recall effort as part of a broader Republican agenda to oust Democrats from power and expand conservative restrictions on voting, civil rights, and abortion. Chris, is this a sign that US voters are beginning to accept Biden, even though imperfect, and his policies, while moving away from Trump and what he stood for?
Yeah. You know, and it's right that you point out the fact that Biden is far from perfect. You know, because he is not the he is. For me, he's failed to live up to what was depicted on the tin before he was elected. You know, I mean, obviously he's far better than the previous incumbent. But you know, America has, for my mind, America has a fine balancing act. You know, in the years ahead, because the Trump supporters haven't went away, and you know, I could honestly see them, having secret meetings and stuff like that in order to garner support. You know, I mean, such as the ego of Donald Trump himself, and as you say, the previous incumbent in California had some real horrible views regards women, ethnicity, and the whole sort of like reclaiming America and making it great again and stuff like that. So he's. I think he's got a tough act. He's got big shoes to fill, because previous people that have sued in California, include the Arnold Schwarzenegger, and people like Clint Eastwood as well, who was the mayor of Carmel. It's a tough place to actually sort of like placate, because California is such a moving uh, 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 area. It is driven a lot by consumerism. Obviously, it's driven by Hollywood as well. And in order to keep up with the times, I think it has to obviously keep progressing and not regress back into the old ways of America.
Thank you for that, Chris. I suppose it's always difficult to think how an election in a country that's foreign to us, and what it might mean for where that country's heading, especially when there isn't really an election on the horizon. But we'll move on to the next story. A flour mill in Fife is set to benefit from the latest round of freight facilities grant funding to help them move more wheat by sea. Carr's Flour Mills Limited will receive around £357,000 from Transport Scotland to build new grain storage facilities at Kirkcaldy Harbour. It's estimated this will keep around 1.1 million lorry miles off the road each year, with 390,000 miles saved annually in Scotland. Minister for Transport Graham Day said, "I'm pleased to see Carrs receive this grant funding to help them build on their success when it comes to moving wheat by sea. This award will allow them to expand their facilities at Kirkcaldy Harbour and keep lorry miles off the roads. It's exciting to see a Scottish company show what can be achieved with this type of funding, and I'm pleased to be able to highlight their work during Climate Change Week." So, Chris, for me, the two words that leapt out there are lorry miles. We've been hearing a lot about lorry miles lately with the shortage of HGV goods drivers, but I don't want to distract from the main point of the story. Do you think this is the start of like a green shoot, and that there should be more ports in Scotland exporting goods rather than driving to major ports like Dover?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I made calls for this consistently over the past 6 years that Scotland should be developing its own links with Europe through the likes of Edinburgh, Rosyth, over to Belgium, uh, Denmark, all the rest of it. There was a link there to Zeebrugge. So that should be reconnected, and it should be more frequently used. I think Douglas Chapman MP has been on this programme many times talking about that. But with regards to this actual story, this highlights again where the Scottish Government can go with this. Because when I was on the SNP Socialist Group, I constantly made the argument of changing the way that freight is transported within Scotland, and we should get back to be using more of the train infrastructure. We should be using, we should be redeveloping train goods yards in order to use, a shorter point to point, using less heavy truck freight and relying more on more greener electrical sort of like short wheel-based vans and stuff like that in order to transport it, from point to point. The rail freight infrastructure in Scotland, again going back to the 50s and the 60s, was an absolute huge infrastructure where goods were brought up from the likes of England and Wales and stuff like that, and were stored in British Rail goods yards overnight. And then people would come and collect them in the morning and distribute them out to the various communities. That has got to be the way to go. And if we can do that, obviously with electric vehicles, then it's going to take a hell of a lot of the heavy goods off of Scotland's roads.
Do you think that that there is enough money in that fund? I mean, £357,000 going to one company, that sounds quite substantial. I must admit, I don't know what the total amount that is available in the fund and how many companies that might go around. But so rather than just giving cash to companies, although to a good end, is there anything else that the Scottish Government could be doing, do you think, to kind of complement or support this kind of measure?
Well, to my mind, the Scottish Government have got an amazing chance in order to do this as we end the contract with Abellio. And if the First Minister, and I mean this also in the most sincerest terms, but if she is right in what she's saying, is the fact that that the Scottish people are going to reclaim the Scottish Railways, then we have to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. And if we're using the Scottish Railways, we need to use it to the fullest advantage, and that includes utilising the railways in order to transport freight from point to point. As I say, there is really no case to argue between putting goods onto a heavy, long wheelbase Arctic vehicle, starting at say Gretna Green, and moving that up throughout the motorways to Aberdeen and stuff like that. It can easily be done through the train infrastructure that we've got just now. And also, as I said, to redevelop rail freight yards. It doesn't mean to say that all those freight yards have to be passenger halts. They can be exactly what they are, just rail freight yards, where it has nothing to do with passengers and stuff like that, and it's got everything to do with goods. And again, utilising the railways as a greener way and keeping the supply chain running as we are dealing with this, pandemic, as Ian Blackford called it, of a shortage of HGV drivers, because that isn't going to right itself overnight.
It's, yeah, it's also got shades of historic trade routes that Scotland used to have going back centuries. I mean, Scotland is well placed in terms of these kind of historic, shipping lanes and the like. But I just wonder, as a wee general roundup for the end of the show, I mean, I had a quick look at the topics that we've covered tonight, Chris, and they're pretty well balanced. They're not all just things that are happening here in Scotland. It's international news and what's going on in Holyrood, new developments. But the clear majority of stories tonight, to me, seem to have had generated from Westminster. I don't know if you've got anything to say about tonight's show and maybe how things have panned out.
Well, again, I mean, I've often made the point on social media as the fact that here at Broadcasting Scotland, you actually have a news channel which is willing to discuss the news items at length and in depth. And whether they be from Westminster, whether they be from America, they be from the Middle East, it's the fact that the actual news items are actually given the length of time that's required in order to really discuss the issues. Sometimes actually the issues are deeper than the actual news story itself. And why people in the wider Yes movement don't actually engage with Broadcasting Scotland is something that absolutely beggars belief to me. I'm constantly fed up of people who are bemoaning, quite rightly, they're bemoaning the BBC News Service, the STV News Service, and Sky News and whatnot, and what have you. We've got our own news service that is, uh, discussing issues that are, concerning Scotland, and on the home front. But again, what happens in America does have an impact on Scotland somewhere down the line. There's millions of expats out in America, that are deeply interested. And very similar to the Middle East as well. So whether it's stories about Westminster or whether it's stories about Scotland or even the Senate or even the Northern Ireland Assembly, it all pertains to Scotland, and people need to start engaging.
You're absolutely right, Chris, and thank you for your endorsement of our news. You're right. We do strive to be international, but obviously we want to cover what's happening here in Scotland as well. And Chris, you know that we really appreciate your support and your input in these topics, so thank you for joining us tonight on Scotland at 7. Hope to see you again soon.
Yep, no, thank you very much, Brian. Again, I'm just a small cog in the machine. There are other more qualified people than me.
I don't agree, Chris. I'm sorry, but thank you.
As long as you can put up with my socialist rants, I'm happy to come back.
Okay, that's great. We'll see you soon then. So that was Scotland at 7. My name is Brian Liddy. Thank you to Chris for being our guest again. As usual, viewers, we end with an appeal for your support. If you can afford to sign up to a subscription, that will help us to keep doing what we do and more besides. If you just want to follow the address on the bottom of your screen there, we'd be hugely grateful. There are major events like COP26 on the horizon and on our doorstep, and we have plans to provide a full schedule of programmes just in general anyway down the line. So if you can help, that would be great. But thank you for watching and good night.